SpaceX's all-new nuclear Starship. Musk envisions transporting millions of people to Mars and residing there sustainably. On a voyage that might last up to 9 months, this Starship can only carry 100 people at a time. Is it possible to speed up the process by using Starships fueled by nuclear energy? This is a look at how converting the wild Starship's power source to nuclear energy may reduce the trip time by half. The Starship is an incredible piece of equipment. It's huge, quick, and fully reusable, and both phases can land vertically. NASA has hired SpaceX to use it to put NASA astronauts on the moon, and the US military wants it to be used for ultra-rapid transportation services here on Earth. The Starship, on the other hand, is intended for longer journeys. Both SpaceX and NASA wanted to transport them to Mars, although for different reasons. The Starship's limitations become apparent at this point. Due to the limitations of conventional rocket fuel, a one-way journey aboard the Starship might take up to 9 months and a ridiculous amount of fuel. For many reasons, this is not ideal for Musk's objectives. Musk's goal of relocating enough people on the Earth in a short period of time to create a self-sustaining community is the most prominent example. As Musk has said, achieving this objective would require transferring millions of people over the enormous distance between the two worlds in a very short amount of time. A single one-way journey, however, may take up to 9 months depending on the planet's configuration. With 100 colonists departing at once, the most the Starship could hope for would be a stream of Mars arrivals. Faster transportation is required to reach the scale Musk desires. Other practical considerations for the necessity for speed and the big goal of conquering Mars exist. Consider, for example, radiation. This is a source of frustration for engineers who are building primitive spacecraft for long journeys. When operating in space, radiation is omnipresent. Even SpaceX understands this and intends to include a radiation shelter in the passenger-carrying versions of the Starship. That's a good decision, but the more time you spend out there, the more you're exposed to a high dosage of radiation and the healthcare problems that come with it, which may put a stop to any Mars exploration plans. For initiatives like these, radiation-induced cancer or infertility are genuine risks, which would be devastating to any hopes of increasing the Mars human population via reproduction. The simplest way out of this is to simply speed up the journey, which seems unlikely given the chemistry of burning propellants. While Musk wants to put humans on Mars permanently, NASA is going there to gather data. Even for unmanned missions, it's essential to collect data as soon as possible in order to justify the massive resources needed. NASA is prepared to send the Starship to even farther locations, such as Neptune, if it makes it to Mars. The spacecraft Voyager 2 took 12 years to reach there the previous time this occurred, and it only got a few spectacular photos during a flyby. That is long enough for the country's leadership to rise in value and missions to be terminated. Astronomers would have received their images and data sooner and even started follow-up missions if the Voyager 2 had been capable of traveling faster. There's also the issue of transporting adequate fuel for longer journeys. To escape the Earth's pull, a massive quantity of propellant is required. If this occurs, the spacecraft may run out of fuel and be unable to go. SpaceX is addressing this issue by establishing a network of space fueling stations to refuel the Starship. However, since it takes approximately a half-dozen additional Starships to get a single one completely loaded for Mars, the procedure becomes more complex and costly. Everything is far out in space, which is a huge area. So, if you want to get anywhere, you must move quickly. So, what can SpaceX do to speed up the Starship? Actually, there are a number of choices. One of these is the use of solar sails. Is it, however, substantially faster? The following is an illustration of how solar sails operate. You've probably seen sails moving boats faster when the wind pushes them. The wind is made up of air particles with enough acceleration to displace the ship's sails. Energy from the sun is made up of photons, which have momentum despite not having mass. As a result, if SpaceX mounts enough sails on the Starship, photons from the sun striking the sails will push the Starship forward. The Japanese Icarus spacecraft that flew past Venus used this propulsion method. It's also deployed in the planetary civilization LightSail 2, which is circling the Earth, But how quickly can the Starship's solar sails move it? Attaching sails the size of a football field would generate approximately 9.3 Wm, which is very low considering its enormous weight. The farther the Starship travels away from the Sun, the fewer photons are able to reach the sails. This translates to a slower rate of speed. Nuclear propulsion is the second choice. Certainly, a spacecraft may be powered by the same nuclear power plant that generates electricity. NASA has seemed hesitant to explore nuclear alternatives for its rockets, despite the negative publicity it receives when nuclear accidents occur. However, you should be aware that NASA is highly engaged in their Space Launch System rocket and the Artemis moon mission, both of which will employ chemical propulsion. Furthermore, since many NASA choices are politically driven, the agency may be hesitant to introduce this kind of initiative. A private firm like SpaceX, on the other hand, is not bound by such restrictions. Musk can power his Starship with nuclear energy if he so chooses. What distinguishes nuclear-powered rockets? The energy density of uranium as a fuel is extremely high, more than 4 million times the same as a normal chemical rocket propellant. This implies that the quantity of uranium required to produce the same amount of energy as hydrazine is much less, making it simpler to manage in space. What will happen in such a case? Musk has two options if he chooses to pursue nuclear energy. The first is nuclear thermal propulsion, which is both powerful and energy efficient when used actively. A modest nuclear fission reactor will be aboard the Starship, such as those used to power nuclear submarines. The reactor will heat a gas, such as hydrogen, which will be propelled via a nozzle and used to propel the spaceship forward. This thermal propulsion technology outperforms chemical propulsion technologies by more than a factor of 2. They have a thrust ranging up to 100,000 newtons. To put that in perspective, if you can produce that much force in your vehicle, you can accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than a quarter of a second, but on a wider scale. This implies the Starship can arrive on Mars in roughly 25% less time, according to NASA engineers. Nuclear electric propulsion is the second alternative. The concept is to employ energy generated by a high-power fission reactor to operate a propulsion system, such as a Hall thruster. This is not only more attractive, but it is also slightly more effective than thermal propulsion. It also has the advantage of being able to power several electric thrusters at once. For very lengthy journeys, such as to Mars or beyond, electric propulsion is the best option. It does not need solar energy, is very efficient, and generates a lot of thrust. This type of propulsion, according to our calculations, can deliver the Starship to Mars in approximately 70% less time. Is SpaceX working on a similar project? Musk has previously said that nuclear solutions may be preferable to the Raptor engine's chemical propulsion system. That may indicate a variety of things, but we're keeping a close eye on it. What do you think of Musk's strategy? Are you interested in learning more about NASA and SpaceX, as well as their strategies and initiatives? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Before leaving, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell button for notifications of our future content. With that being said, see you in the next one.